we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. You're here with Megan, Brand Manager for Soft Solutions for our VoIP solutions, and Matt, our Senior Engineer.
Hello.
And today we're going to have a quick look at Service Pack 3, which is in alpha, so we haven't quite got to beta yet, but there's some exciting new features coming through. Matt's going to walk us through the key changes around what we're seeing so far in that alpha update, and then at the end we'll have time for any questions and we can obviously answer those, and it doesn't have to be relating to this specific webinar. If it's a general 3CX query, happy to answer that question while we're on the call if we can. So I'll hand over to Matt and I'll butt in every so often if there's something I need to add from the brand management perspective. But we'll zoom through this. As we've said before, we're trying to keep these webinars really short and sweet and focused on a specific function. So, you know, we should only be about 10 to 15 minutes and then have time for questions and let everybody get on with their day. Thanks again, and I'll hand over to Matt.
Awesome, thanks Megan. Thank you everyone for joining us today. So again, as Megan noted, it is going to be a quick one, just we'll blast through. So we're currently looking at SP3 Alpha at the moment, and we expect it to go into beta shortly. Typically with these service pack alphas and betas, they're usually about a week apart, so there must be some very cool functionality coming into the beta. So let's have a look at a couple of the key features. So what's new in SP3? So we've got some new options and a little bit of a tidy up on the management console itself. There are some new DNS options available for SIP trunks. So traditionally, when you entered trunk details in 3CX, would reach out and see whether there was a pointer to work out whether it needed to do UDP or TCP and the port that it was on. Now, from within the management console, you actually have the ability to be able to change that, and I highly recommend checking out the 3CX blog post around it, because it does detail how this works, and there's also a really large piece of documentation that's just been made available under docs on the 3CX website around how this works. So from my point of view, what I'm expecting in future for this to enable is there are some providers out there with some slightly different settings than the norm. With VoIP providers in general, there is no real best practice when it comes to how a SIP stack is set up. So this will allow for a lot more flexibility, hopefully, with how 3CX can connect to other providers. We do have, of course, a lot of bug fixes. I always find it interesting when a new release comes out, because you have the general blog post and I think, oh, I'm going to go check through the change log, and it's lengthy. So notably in the bug fixes within the alpha, there's a few fixes for a couple of memory leaks and crashes that have been going on randomly within 3CX. So that's very exciting to see. We've also got new functionality coming in the Android client. So obviously with 3CX, we have a few ways that we can provision a phone. We can have it on Windows, we can have it on Mac, we can have it, of course, with a standard desk phone as well, and then we've got the mobile clients there. So there has been a bit of a redesign. We'll be looking at that briefly on Thursday with some of the new functionality. But something that was really key and really exciting to see is when I've been doing a lot of pre-sales work and working out call flow with customers, there's always been the question, if I have 3CX sitting on my mobile and I'm on Wi-Fi and I walk outside the Wi-Fi zone, what will happen? And it's hard to say. But now there is new functionality within the Android client. I'm hoping to see this on the iOS client shortly before the full release of Service Pack 3. But again, it does come down to Apple has quite high standards, whereas Android is a little more flexible with how the code works. But as it stands now, with the new Android client, you can be on Wi-Fi and you can walk away from it and it will swap over to 4G without dropping any packets. So it does allow for a lot of continuity, which is really cool. Coming down to the tidy up in the management console. So previously, when we set up a 3CX system, we set up the SIP trunks and get all the things working. And of course, that's a lot easier when we're using an interop provider, because a lot of the settings are already pre-pended in there for us, so it simplifies things. And then if we were to bridge a few systems together, then we'd have to step out of SIP providers, we'd have to go into the bridges section within the management console and then set it up from there. Now, from the get-go, you can set up your SIP provider and then set your bridges in there. So all the connections of the system are all in a centralized place. So it's going to make deployment a lot more simpler and a lot more cleaner as well. Just give me a sec, my surface is having trouble. There we go. So what's new in the applications? The user interface is a lot nicer, which is really cool. We've covered off the Android changes where it can swap between Wi-Fi and a mobile connection. They've also improved the security in there as well. So already 3CX with the mobile applications was using port 5090, but now there is end-to-end encryption for calls, which is really good from a security standpoint. No man-in-the-middle attacks there. Also really exciting to see, so anyone who's been following the latest updates for 3CX will note that a little while ago 3CX put in support for IPv6. So this has now come to the mobile clients as well, which is really cool. Obviously a lot of networking is moving to IPv6. The IPv4 allocations are being recycled, or carriers are doing CGNet, which is problematic for VoIP. Again, it's a strong reason to use port 5090 and the encryption there to make things flow nicely. Additionally, now on the apps as well, we've got chat that's on par with the web client. So moving forward, a lot of stuff will be focused towards the web client with functionality with 3CX. The desktop phone for Windows and Mac is still going to be supported, but a lot of the cool stuff will be within that web client. We've been using it quite actively as well. It's very cool. So I definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't done so already. And probably another standout point as well, which was under the changelog, is we have a lot of resellers that when their subscription or renewals coming up, we of course our value add is we notify you ahead of time, but this is also coming now into 3CX to a degree as well, where you have the ability now to notify someone within the management group, the management group as a whole, when the expiry time is coming, and that is set for a renewal notice 14 days out, 7 days out, and 1 day out as well. So it makes things a lot simpler. So we do expect the beta soon. I imagine it's going to be fairly content rich given it's been more than a week. And of course, the big disclaimer, this isn't for production systems, this is for testing only. It's a nice way to get a sneak peek into upcoming functionality as well. And that's this little bite. Megan, would you like to add anything?
I don't think there's anything much to add to that, Matt. Just that there will be changes between the alpha and the beta, is what we traditionally see. And you know, the development that's happening with 3CX is coming thick and fast. I'm literally checking their website 2 or 3 times a day for any updates, along with what we get as a distributor, just to check that we're not missing any of these key changes. As Matt mentioned, the web client is a very strong focus for 3CX, and also that chat functionality. So bringing that across into the mobile platforms, the iOS and the Android, is going to make everything a lot more simple and continuous, and allow staff that flexibility of the different ways of interacting with their 3CX system. Does anybody have any questions on Alpha Update 3 or any other general 3CX queries that we can help with at this time? Pop them in the chat if you do, while we're just checking for any questions coming through. If there's anybody that is needing intermediate and advanced training, we are running a technical training down in Palmerston North at the end of September, on the 25th, I think it's a Wednesday, and that's actually a 1-day event. We will be conducting the intermediate training starting promptly by 9 o'clock in the morning, having just a very short break for lunch, and then moving into the advanced training time. So we are condensing that into a one-day course just due to location and the people we already know of that are driving specifically for that event. The links for booking are up on our weekly newsletter, on our blog as well, and in the VoIP updates. So don't hesitate to register if you need to come along. I'm working on other trainings, hopefully one more South Island and possibly one more Auckland one before the end of the year. But I just have to juggle Matt's valuable time because I've got him moving all around the country and he looks after other brands that he's moving all around the country for as well. So, are there any questions that have come through there, Matt?
No, looks like we're all good.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time. We do appreciate you taking this small bite of time out. We have another webinar on Thursday where Matt's going to look in more detail at the Android and iOS apps. A lot of people aren't using those to their full potential, so Matt will have a quick look through those and the new functionality. So they're both in beta at the moment, and we'll be going live shortly with the latest versions of those. Again, thanks for your time, and hopefully you can join us again on Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.